Welcome back to Winning Hand, the podcast about Marvel Champions, one card at a time. That's where you are. That's what you're listening to right now. My name is Boom Guy. I'm the host of this beautiful podcast, and I'm here today with my friends Keiko and LazyTitan.
How's it hanging?
Hello.
Well, guys, we are here for episode 9 of the podcast. Episode 9. Now, be real.
It's been a long journey.
How many of you thought we wouldn't get to episode 9? Hands
I
up.
had full faith in us.
I didn't even think we were going to get to episode 2.
I always believed.
Well, no, here we are, episode 9. Thanks, everybody, for listening and downloading on whatever platform you do that. Thanks for all the messages and the comments. I do actually read all the emails, and I respond to them. So if you sent a message, hopefully you liked your response. But I do read them all. I don't always respond to comments, but I do respond to all the emails that we get. If you ever want to get in touch with us, feel free. We are winninghandpodcast@gmail.com. I get quite a few emails there. We are on Reddit and Discord and whatever. Feel free to get in touch. Without further ado, let's get into the podcast because today we are here for the 9th episode of this beautiful podcast to talk about an aggression card. We teased it last time, and I think, Keiko, I would like you to tell us what the card is because I know you're going to be excited.
Yes, so I talk about it often. It's not quite to the extent that I'd prefer it to, but we're getting there. So
It's
we're
close.
doing, yeah, it's close. So we're doing Hulk, the aggression ally. He is 2 cost. He's got no thwart, 3 attack, 1 consequential damage, 5 hit points. His traits are Avenger and Gamma. And his forced response is, after Hulk attacks, discard the top card of your deck. If that card's printed resource has a fist, then you deal 2 damage to any enemy. If it's lightning, deal 1 damage to each character on the board, on everybody's board. If it's a mental resource, you discard Hulk. If it's a wild resource, then all of the above.
Yeah.
And he himself is a lightning resource.
It's a lot of text.
It is.
It is a lot of text.
He has a beefy wall of text in his card, and we're going to talk about the card in detail, obviously, as we always do. Before we do that, we are going to discuss what we have been playing recently. Recently, I have found a new appreciation for Groot. I've always wanted to like Groot. I've always liked him in theory. And the Guardians movie, Guardians 3, we talked about in a previous episode, has really kind of gotten me juiced up for some Guardians. I've been playing a lot of them recently. But Groot is one that I think is tricky. And a lot of people don't really know what to do with him. I don't see him get played a lot. And I think the kind of prevailing decks that I see are to either stay in alter ego form to build up your counters or to somehow defend and avoid losing counters so that when your big I Am Groot cards come out, you can use them to deal a ton of damage or thwart for a ton. Now, similar to what I did with War Machine, I don't know, we talked about War Machine a while back, I looked at Groot and kind of saw what I wanted him to be, and then I tried to make that happen. I did it with War Machine for a long time, but when I stopped doing that and just tried to be what I think Groot actually is, it became a lot more fun. Obviously, I love protection. I've been playing him in protection, but for me, I think the trick is you don't try to just keep the counters and go for those big cards. I think it's a 2-cost attack event that does, damage equal to the counters, and a 3-cost thwart event that does thwart equal to the counters on Groot. So the problem with Groot is he has a forced response in his card, right? So when you take any amount of damage or would take any amount of damage, you instead remove a counter. So you can't really save the counters with the tricks that protection has. You can't use sidestep, you can't use jump flip, you can't use energy barrier because all of those just happen after you would lose the counters with the force response. So I just leaned into defending. And so I just built some decks around the perfect defense. So, using Judoka Strike and Not Today and Desperate Defense and all those things that trigger things when you take no damage, because it's essentially impossible to take damage with Groot. You have to flip down once in a while to refresh counters if you lose too many, but you basically can just always defend. And if you're exhausted, you can even take undefended attacks if you're trying to defend for the whole table, and you won't take any damage because you have so many counters. And it's been really fun, actually. I quite like him. So I'm going to keep kind of mixing him up. I don't know how well he works in other aspects. Protection is just where I went first, but I might try to build him more. What do you guys think about Groot? You guys like Groot?
I didn't like Groot for a while. I always thought the force response was really kind of a killjoy for me because it does take place before everything else. So jump, flip, sidestep, all the stuff you mentioned doesn't work. The new force field generator does work because it is also force response.
So you
but
can
that's
choose.
really your only way to hold your counters other than just defending for more.
And I used that force response on force field generator. I tried a repurpose deck with Groot, and it actually worked pretty well because you can choose when to use that force interrupt and save it on the table for repurpose. It's worked pretty well too.
It lets you hold the last counter of the force field generator, which is usually the trickiest part of a repurpose deck.
Yeah,
it lets you hold that last one counter to get the perfect repurpose every time, which is nice. I've never played Groot a bunch. He is a defense hero, but he doesn't have a real efficient way to ready himself. He has a one that lets him pay 2 growth counters to ready himself, but that's one thing I find about him is rather frustrating is that he can't really ready himself easily. Like if you play Ghost Spider or Shadow Cat, they have ways to ready. Those are classically defense heroes.
And you can't use What Doesn't Kill Me with Groot because he often hasn't taken any damage, so you can't.
Exactly. You also can't play cards that the Guardians card Shake It Off. That gives you a tough card because you never take damage.
Right. He has a one of his upgrades that you can lose 2 counters to ready yourself, I think.
You can ready, but
when you defend.
He doesn't have a lot of... The other ways are free, like Ghost Spider can ready for free. You have to play an event, which you're going to do anyway. So Groot, it costs him stuff to ready, or you have to play cards like Indomitable, and I often don't like playing Indomitable. I often think it's kind of but
I use it sometimes. It's nice to have one Indomitable out there. I was using Desperate Defense, obviously, whenever I could, too.
I've never played him outside of Protection, so maybe I need to try that.
I've tried him in Justice before. That's a common build with him, I think.
Or Justice.
Maybe we'll just talk about Groot at some point because he sounds all right. I've never played. I'm more of a completionist, so I opened his card package and shelved him. I was like, this looks nice in my collection.
Yeah, he came in the big box, right?
That's right. Yep,
Galaxy's Most Wanted, which I think a lot of people think that whole box is kind of a dud. I love Rocket. We talked about Rocket in a previous episode. So I won't go back into that again. I appreciate Groot more and more, and most of that campaign is... Yeah, we talked about it in a previous episode. We won't go over that again.
It is a must-buy, though, because it comes with Looking for Trouble. So
it comes with Rocket and Groot, which I think makes it a must-buy, in my opinion. So that's what I've been playing recently, is Groot. Keiko, why don't you tell us what you have been playing recently?
All right, so very fittingly, so I played a couple of characters, but for the sake of this episode, I have been playing Hulk again in Aggression.
Okay.
Like I mentioned before, I'm tweaking it. Of course, he's gonna be one of my main characters because why not? I feel like I have to make a point for Hulk within the community, and I actually played with Mr. Meesons, so he can attest to that. No, he pulled his weight and he pulled through.
I actually played Hulk recently too. I built a deck, and it was fine. I think at this point in the card pool, there are ways to build Hulk the hero that are perfectly fine. I'd never feel like he's particularly powerful or particularly strong, obviously, and building him often just kind of, you have to kind of take a roundabout way sometimes, or you have to include things that you don't really want to, or you end up building a deck that I think to myself, if I played this same set of cards really with any other hero, it would just be better. But, I like to pull all the heroes out, especially the ones that don't get as much love. So I do play Hulk occasionally, but it usually is a couple times and then he's back in the box.
Well, you know what? I will take the character development from Boom Guy that Hulk is fine. That's fine. That's a step up from what it was before.
Yeah.
I feel like I have to be the voice of reason here and hold a hard stance. Hulk is bad, and you shouldn't play him. Anyone who wants to play him, it's more about the meme of playing Hulk than it is about actually enjoying playing of Hulk.
No, I am passionate about Hulk. He is my hero and my alter ego.
But the cards just don't do it, man. They're just not Just
You
not
just
there.
have to believe. You just have to feel it in your heart.
I don't know. I think I'm going to side with LazyTitan on this one. Hulk is bad. I mean, I think the
Oh, he's
community
bad.
agrees that he's the worst hero, if not one of the worst. I think generally what I see is people will think, right, him and Valkyrie are kind of on a tier by themselves. There's a few people who think Valkyrie's good and a few people who think Hulk is good, but generally I think it's agreed he's bad. But I think with that said, just like Valkyrie, you can build a serviceable Valkyrie deck. You can build a serviceable Hulk deck with the card pool we have. They just are never going to be particularly good, and everything you do will just get them to be kind of adequate. That's the best case scenario. That's kind of a ceiling.
Serviceable and fine. I will take that.
Yeah, that's the peak for him.
All right, LazyTitan, what have you been playing?
I have been playing my personal favorite Spider-Man, and that is my good friend Miles Morales. I don't actually know him personally, but I'd like to. He seems cool. But I've been playing him in, lo and behold, Aggression. I think his Arachnobatics card is pretty cool. So I built it around using Warrior Skill and Aggressive Energy to increase that Arachnobatics. Because it does damage in 3 instances, you can increase the damage a lot more with Arachnobatics and Warrior Skill, or with Warrior Skill and Aggressive Energy, which means with just one of them, you can get to 11 damage, and with the other, you can get to 14 with a single Arachnobatics. So 14 for one is pretty solid. Requires a little bit of setup, obviously, because you got to stun and confuse. But in the campaign that I was playing, we were playing on Standard 2. So the steady was helping me get to that more consistently.
Yeah, steady really helps because you can keep those status cards on there, right, until you really have Arachnobatics in your hand. On Standard or Expert, without that steady, you really they trigger, which makes Miles really powerful because then you have all the status effects, but you can't play Arachnobatics as consistently.
Yeah, Arachnobatics is not his best card, so it's not like a huge loss. You'd much rather just have infinite stuns and confuses, which is what Miles normally does. But I found the Arachnobatics build to be pretty fun, and then also his flip down ability, which is the same as Colossus and War Machine, lets you shuffle them back in. So if you use Double Life to flip down, Double Life is one of his cards that lets you get a free flip of your hero, and then it readies you if you spend a fist resource. So you flip down, you maybe recover, you shuffle your Arachnobatics back in your deck, you flip back up, and then you draw it next turn because you're looking for it. And Miles has, I think, the best card cycling in the game, except for maybe Captain Marvel. Nobody goes through cards like Miles does because he has access to Champion's Mole Bunker and also Genki, which is either Avengers Mansion or half of a Champion's Mole Bunker, which means if you draw a hand of 5, you can really see 8 cards a turn every hero turn, and you can pitch all the ones you don't want. And then I was playing also the one, what's it called? The one with
and
Black
every time
Panther.
he flips down, he can shuffle a card in too, right?
Yeah, you can shuffle all your cards in, and I was playing Press the Advantage to cycle through my deck even faster, Moon Girl to cycle even faster. So it was just very much trying to find that Arachnobatics and all your Miles cards and fly through your deck to get them. It was fun.
Yeah, Miles, I don't know. What's your opinion of Miles, Keiko?
That's the thing. I really want to enjoy playing him because of the fact that canonically and within the game, of course, he's got access to Venom Strike and Camouflage. So to be able to play around with that throughout the game, confusing, stunning, getting tough, like it sounds fun, but every time I try it, I just can't get it. Plus his 9 health kind of really hurts to play
9
around.
health is rough.
Yeah, but he sounds like he would be a fun character. I just personally can't get him. He was one of the other characters that I mentioned before that I was playing alongside of Hulk. So I'll talk about him at some other point. But no, I want to play him. I want to have fun with him, but he's a little hard to work around.
Yeah, for me, Miles falls into the category of I want to like him, and when I don't play him for a while, I think about how cool he is, and then I try playing him, and it just never quite comes off the way I would like it to. I just recently played a couple of games of him. I played through the Sinister Motives campaign with Miles, and he's good, I think. Without the stun and confuse lock, which I think is pretty easy, if you lean into that, it's pretty easy to do. Without that, I think he's just kind of a decent hero that isn't amazing. he has a power ceiling that I think if you play him in solo is pretty high, actually, because he has like consistent damage and consistent thwart, but it's not very high. So when you're playing by yourself, you can play web shot and deal 4 damage and then trigger his, 2 damage and stun or whatever, and that's amazing in solo. I just find in like a multiplayer game, if you're not just putting out status cards to cancel everything, he just feels a little underwhelming to me often. He has one of the worst alter ego supports in the game. Jefferson Davis is just bad.
Mm-hmm. Unfortunate name, too.
An unfortunate name. Yes, I don't know why he's called that, but also he just isn't good. And so, yeah, I don't know. Miles is okay. I don't love him. I don't hate him, but I just think, yeah, he's all right.
Yeah, I love Miles Morales as the character. He's my personal favorite Spider-Man, so I always try to make him work. And he's good, but I will also say an aggression deck is a good place to play our card of the day.
Hulk. Well, hold on. Before we get to the card of the day, I just want to pick up on something you just said a minute ago. LazyTitan, you said Miles Morales is your favorite Spider-Man. Keiko, who's your favorite Spider-Man?
I do have to give it to Peter.
And why is it Hobie Brown?
Oh, right. Well, he's obviously just the best character. He, fights against the system.
No, but seriously, who's your favorite Spider-Man?
No, I'd have to give it out to Peter Parker. He's just the OG. Nothing can top him.
I don't mean in the game. I just mean the character, in the movies and the whatever. For me, it's Peter Parker as well. And if we're going to the movies, Tobey Maguire is my Spider-Man. That's the one that I grew up with.
I personally like Tom Holland. I'm sure I'll get a lot of flack for that. I don't know. To me, I think he's got that perfect balance between the three, Andrew, Toby, and Tom. I think Tom Holland, to me, is the best live action. So, but not counting Peter, because he's the OG, I'm going to have to give it to Silk if I have to talk about one of my favorite variants.
Yeah. We have to talk about Silk sometime because you're always on about how much you like Silk. We should talk about the ally, and maybe we'll get a Silk pack someday.
God, I hope so. I really hope so.
I know.
It's not out of the question.
It could happen. I don't think it's completely unreasonable. If we get maybe another spider pack, we might get it.
Maybe they'll line it up around Beyond the Spider-Verse.
Mm-hmm.
That's a theory I've heard.
It's got a release date of, as of now, late March of next year, 2024.
Yeah.
Yep, March 29, 2024.
I've heard the theory that that's when they're going to release another Spider Cycle. And if they do, I'm betting that 2099 is in the bracket.
I hope so. I'm honestly surprised that 2099 has not got a release yet because
before they're waiting.
Yeah, before Miles' popularity, he was arguably like the next main Spider-Man.
Well, I think I heard, there was a big, I don't know if it was a big, there was a post on the Marvel Champions Reddit not too long ago that I was reading through, and somebody posited on there that if you look back, so this Spider-Verse movie that just released originally had a release date of last year on April 8th of 2022, which is the exact same day that Sinister Motives came out. So that person was saying he thought there was going to be more spiders, but then because that movie got delayed, they may have shelved that, and then they filled out with some Champions stuff in that cycle. We got Nova and Ironheart kind of weirdly in the middle of a spider cycle. And then we shifted to whatever the next thing was, X-Men, I think maybe. So that person was saying maybe they're holding a spider cycle and they're waiting for the next movie. So that last movie they'll try to coincide, which I didn't think was a completely unreasonable take, given that those things should have come out on the same day last year. But, I don't know. I'd be okay with a spider cycle. How about before we get into the card of the day, let's talk about spiders. Who would you want to see in a spider cycle? You already said 2099.
I think I'd like to see 2099. I think I'd also, like we said earlier, Hobie Brown.
Oh, Hobie would be a good one.
A great ally in the game already. And if you've seen the movie, the new Spider-Verse movie,
no spoilers.
Very fun and cool. No spoilers, but he's in it and he's cool.
I mean, for me, Ben Reilly, as a 90s kid, I want to see the Ben Reilly Spider-Man, Scarlet Spider.
Yep. Scarlet Spider is a big spider in the universe, so
I would like to see him. I'd be down with a Spider Noir pack.
Yeah, I think that's not out of the question.
Yeah, because he's the only one
from the first movie.
From the first one that doesn't have a tech.
which isn't unreasonable if we think back to that Reddit thread. If we're talking about, well, they had the other ones, and then we just had 2 random champions in the middle of that. One of them could have been Spider Noir.
That was planned.
One of them could have been 2099. I don't know.
Right.
But it's I don't know. I could
Do we
see
think we'll get another Spider's box, like another campaign, or we'll just get like a cycle of some heroes?
Man, I would be down for a box.
I'm down for a box. There's a lot of good Spider-Man villains that they have not used.
Yeah, and other Spider, heroes too. So I think
And
they definitely could do another one.
They very well could have a Spider-Verse themed box. Like, it is a big event that happens within the Marvel universe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the movies are super big. They're super popular, and I bet the next one will be even more, if not as popular as the last ones. And, they could bring out the Spot, who is the main villain of the last one.
Yep.
I've been saying that I want to see some of those villains in the Sinister Six scenario come in as solos. So get like a Kraven, get a Doc Ock, get an Electro maybe as like solo villains. I think that'd be cool.
There's just so many we haven't seen, right?
There's so many cool Spider-Man villains.
Carnage and Lizard and all
Mr. Negative,
all the rest of them. So there's just so many heroes. I think they could and villains. I think they could really do a big box, and then a couple hero packs. That would be cool.
And Spider-Man
I'd be down.
sells. Spider-Man
Yeah,
is like the biggest Marvel hero, and he will sell.
And if they time it with the movies,
for sure,
2099, all the rest of them, they'll for sure go. So I'd be down.
Within the comics, too, I think one of the hero releases, because he plays a big role, is Superior Spider-Man. Otto Octavius is Spider-Man.
That could be a cool one.
It would be really cool to have a lot of tech gameplay for his deck.
Yeah. Another tech hero like Iron Man and Rocket.
More tech stuff and more cards that care about tech. That'd be really cool, actually.
Yeah.
And plus, he's a very aggressive Spider-Man, so maybe we get more of like aggressive, because we don't have any aggression-centered spider people except for Spider Anya.
Yeah.
Well, that's the other thing that made me think that there's another cycle coming. It's because all the spider allies that we have are either gray, red, or yellow.
Green
or
yellow.
Green or yellow. There's no red, no aggression spiders, and there's no blue spiders, no leadership. So maybe there was some heroes that were supposed to come out in that cycle that didn't, and that's why there's just a big hole in the spider allies. It's weird that they're only in 2 aspects. So maybe there was some reason why that happened.
2099 could be leadership or aggression.
I want to see more spiders. I think another box would totally work. I mean, if we're getting the X-Force, I don't know anything about the X-Force.
I don't care for the X-Men. I don't care for the X-Force.
But tons of people do, and I guarantee you that a spiders box with 2099 and Hobie would sell like hotcakes. So I'm sure they'll do it.
Well, spiders are not at all what we're talking about today. So we just took a nice little detour, but that's fine. Hopefully you're still with us. And if you are going to hear about the 2-cost Hulk ally, who I think is much better than the Hulk hero.
Considerably.
I will agree with that one. I will give you that one.
But as always, let's start with the art on this card. We already read the card. Keiko talked us through the wall of text that is his card. But the art, what do you guys think about this art?
I think it's awesome.
When we talk about the art, we mentioned artist credit. If it doesn't have the credit as this doesn't, then it comes from a source, which, Boomer, do you have that source open?
I have that up. It comes from Avengers Assemble, Volume 2, Number 6 from 2012.
Nice.
Not that old.
Not that old. I think it's pretty classic Hulk, right? Green muscles, purple pants.
Ripped purple pants, huge muscles. Fire all around him.
Mouth open, screaming. Well, this one doesn't look like he's screaming intensely, but just that mouth open. That's the Hulk. That's the Hulk way.
And that's all you need.
Unlike some of the other cards that we've talked about and we've looked at, this does not look like Mark Ruffalo.
Yeah, that's true.
And 2012, I think, is when the Avengers movie came out.
That is when the Avengers movie came out. Or maybe 2011.
There would have been some time with Mark Ruffalo before that, right? But he doesn't look like Mark Ruffalo. So this feels like they are not going into the MCU at that point, which is fine. I think it's okay to have distinct. But we talked about Iron Man was just looked like Robert Downey Jr.
I don't know if Mark Ruffalo is as definitively Hulk as RDJ is Iron Man.
Probably not.
No offense to Mark Ruffalo, but RDJ kind of just is Iron Man now. That's just kind of what he looks like in all the art, in all the comics. That's just kind of what Iron Man looks like now.
Also, we're not throwing shade, but he's also just a CGI monster all the time that kind of looks like Mark Ruffalo. It's not really even Mark Ruffalo. So
I mean, in the later movies, he's just Mark Ruffalo. He's not even the Hulk anymore.
There was a weird thing where he didn't even become Hulk anymore in the movies. I don't know. They kind of did him dirty.
Either way, I think he's not quite as influential on the character of Hulk as RDJ is.
That's entirely fair point.
In the same way that I think Thor doesn't look like Chris Hemsworth, to my knowledge. Like a lot of art of Thor doesn't look like Chris Hemsworth.
Yeah, that's true.
Just kind of RDJ's kind of
maybe it's just Robert Downey Jr. and he's just
Chris Evans.
That's the
maybe.
one.
I mean, Captain America's always been like blonde hair.
Yeah,
that's just what he is.
Okay, so this is Bruce Banner Hulk. I'm sure there's other Hulks.
I'm sure.
I know there's a red Hulk and a gray Hulk, and there's other Hulks, but this is Bruce Banner Hulk, 2-cost ally. There's not a lot to talk about in the art. It's just kind of Hulk. He's obviously in the middle of smashing something, and he's yelling, and he's flexing, and it's good. It's Hulk. It's obviously Hulk. It jumps off. So I think, yeah. In terms of theme, we always talk about the theme of a card. So Hulk has no thwart. And not only does he have no thwart, he just has a line where thwart would be. It's not 0.
You just actually
It's
can't.
that he actually cannot thwart.
I didn't know that Hulk was a gentleman like that. I didn't understand that he was a man of high class.
He understands the power of aggression, and he does not, and he will not thwart. He has one solution to a problem, and it is just a punch. Yeah, LazyTitan famously is trying very hard to coin
the term
the gentleman's thwart
as damage.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll get there. I think it's weird he does not have a fist.
That is true. He generates a lightning resource when you spend him.
I think
is weird,
it's
right?
I think thematically it's supposed to signify like his transformation, his radiation. Like that's the energy
gamma.
resource.
I see that.
Okay, I can see that. I mean, I think fist is a more natural fit, but now that you see the argument, I can see it.
I was gonna say I never noticed, or at least I never put 2 and 2 together that the thwart has a line through it. So that just means absolutely no thwart. I have been playing that wrong this whole time. Then, whenever I get cards that kind of add thwart, I never put that together. That
means if there was any attachment ever that like boosted an ally's thwart in aggression, right? There are some in leadership, and I guess you could build a Spider-Woman deck, but whatever. If you ever put something on him that gave him thwart, he still couldn't actually thwart.
You just can't. You're not allowed to.
So if you put a comms implant on him, or you put, inspired, or whatever those attachments are, you actually can't even thwart with him because you just can't. It's just kind of cool.
So
it's the only one I can think of that is that way, right? There are no other allies or heroes.
There's no other anything that has that line.
No.
But as far as theme goes, I will point out that the theme of no thwart, only smash is pretty Hulk. But because of his ability, he often also doesn't smash. Which I will point out as maybe losing points for the theme. He does have 3 attack, which is a lot for an ally, especially at 2 cost. 3 attack, 5 health is a ton. But there is a danger to using his ability as also part of the Hulk.
Before we get into the danger, let's just talk about he costs 2, which makes any ally really good anyway.
Yes.
He then has 3 damage. He only takes 1 consequential for that,
True.
and he has 5 hit points. So potentially, and we'll get into his ability in a second, potentially he has 5 activations. He could do 15 damage for 2 cost. That's pretty crazy.
Over 5 turns.
But still. And now, of course, there's a catch. The catch is he has this ability. So, okay, hold on. Actually, before we get to the ability, he also has the gamma trait, which makes sense thematically, but nothing cares about gamma traits so far, right? Unless I'm wrong.
I don't think so. There's anything, at least not in the Hulk deck itself. Yeah.
I'm really pretty surprised they haven't come out with something that cares about gamma. Like there's a reboot for androids, and there's limitless stamina for the high hit points. But I'm surprised they haven't come out with a card that is just like whatever, a 1-cost upgrade or an event or something that because there's even godlike stamina for the Asgards.
They give us Unshakable, which has Hulk on it, and I think was meant for Hulk, but it does say 14 hit points, and it's not great, but I think it is ideally supposed to be for Hulk, but it's not a gamma specific card. And I think
there should be a godlike stamina.
Card, give them like a cheap event that they can play, because there's only 2 Hulks, and neither of them are good. So She-Hulk's fine, but like neither of them are great, so you could give them a card that makes them. You could honestly put a pretty powerful card out there, and it would just make these heroes like on par. Like give them like a really cheap resource generator, or like a crazy card draw or something, just like something that you can really easily. But you can only play it in Gamma, so it's not like insane.
Right, like Godlike Stamina, which is a crazy card.
It's
That's
insane.
a really good card, but you can only play it with 2 heroes.
Thor or Valkyrie. So
So, yeah. Anyway, we'll get there later. But so now we talk about his ability. And Keiko read it earlier. As a force response, so after Hulk attacks, you discard the top card of your deck. And if that card's printed resource has a fist, you deal 2 damage to an enemy. If it has lightning, you deal 1 damage to each character. If it has a mental resource, you discard Hulk. And if it is a wild, you do all of those things. So 2 damage, then 1 damage to everybody, then you discard Hulk. Now, and this is the catch of Hulk, right? So this is what stops him from being an insane ally and just makes him just a really good ally. Because there's a danger if you use him.
Yep. Obviously, you can build a deck around stacking as many fist resources as you can, just to maximize that damage. And if you do build that deck, I've seen you, Boom Guy, build that with Colossus because he has a lot of built-in fist resources.
Yeah.
That way you can do that. You can pretty much guarantee the 2 damage, which means he, instead of doing 15 damage, he can do 25 damage.
Yeah.
Over 5 activations, which is pretty crazy. If you get lucky, obviously there's some cards you can't change. Some of Colossus cards or anybody's cards
I
aren't.
played that deck and through the campaign, and I put as much as I could just fist resources, and I just activated Hulk every time, and it hits almost every single time. There's a few cards, like you said, that his identity-specific cards that mess that up, but for the most part, it was great.
And I will also say that the mental resource thing seems like it would be not that big of a deal, but since we have Hone Technique now, mental resources in aggression are very important. So you have to be, you can't really play him. If you're planning on using him, you can't really play him in a deck like that because it does kind of nombo with all your mental resources that you're putting in specifically for your cards, your melees and your plan of attacks and whatever else. So it does not quite work as synergy in that archetype, but it does still work for a deck.
Keiko, as a resident Hulk fan, do you play this card? Do you like this card?
I absolutely love this card. I actually play this card in my signature Jessica Drew Spider-Woman deck. Using her ability, her alter ego ability, lets you see the top card of any deck. So typically I will use that ability to see my top card to see if it's viable to play Hulk. And there are plenty of moments where that works out. I think the Hulk ally is a great look at how to balance a card, because 2 costs for a 5 hit point meat shield sounds great on its own, but at the same time you'd be missing out on the insane attack potential. But in using the attack, you kind of run the risk of hitting any of these other effects, forced responses. Discarding Hulk would be huge because you just wasted 2 resources essentially. Dealing 1 damage to every character could make or break a game. It works really well against Ultron, for example, whose whole gimmick is bringing in a bunch of minions, 1 cost or 1 hit point minions.
That's a good point.
So using that ability in particular is great against that. But sometimes you might not want to. Maybe that's
sometimes
going against
your allies.
Exactly, or breaks your own tough or something, whatever it might be. But no, this is a really fun card to use, and it's something about running the risk of what effect you're getting is fun in itself.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
I've played this similar to what you did with Jessica Drew. I've played this in Star-Lord, who has a alter ego ability where you can essentially swap the top card of your deck with a card in your hand, so you can put something on your top of your deck, and then you know what it's going to be. What I use him for most often, he's basically an auto-include in any aggression deck I build with Hawkeye, or anybody like that who is kind of a glass cannon, and as Hawkeye is. So I would even include him. I mean, if I was building Rocket, I might even include him in Rocket aggression, because a 2 cost with 5 hit points, he is likely to survive 2 attacks unless they're really big. And so a 2 cost ally that can jump twice is pretty important. So
he's a great defender.
Someone like Hawkeye, I don't even use his ability. I just put him out. If it's a minion or a smaller attack, Hulk will just defend and hopefully survive, and then Hulk can defend again, and that's worth it. So that's how I think I use him most often. I think you can build a deck around Hulk, right? Especially if you use things like Boot Camp to make him 4 attack. And if you build a deck around making sure you hit those fists, then he does do an insane amount of damage, which can be cool.
Plus, he's an Avenger, and that's something that you can build around too.
Yes. And you can give him things like Honorary Avenger to
Boot
give
camp.
him an extra hit point, whatever. Yeah.
One thing that just occurred to me, and I went to go check, Domino, the new hero that's coming out pretty soon, has this pretty much the same action as Star-Lord, where you can choose a card in your hand and swap that with the top card of your deck, which is another your hero that can probably use Hulk pretty well.
And I think Domino cares about discarding things off the top of your deck. I don't know if it's anytime you discard,
but it's mostly her cards.
Okay, because this is a way to discard. I don't think she has like a native ability that cares about discarding.
Yeah, I think all her cards discard, but she doesn't. None of her stuff cares otherwise.
I mean, I'll just interject here. I do hope we get a hero who cares about discarding at some point, and not just like playing cards to do that, but if there's some kind of native ability that when a card is discarded, whatever, that would be kind of cool, because then you could go back through and put cards like this in, because this is discarding a card. Find any way to do that.
I think
that's
discarding,
kind of a weird non sequitur, but
I think discarding is a fun archetype in pretty much any card game. Discarding from hand or from the top of your deck is always a fun thing, and especially in Marvel Champions, because it's harder to do. If you're playing a game like, say, the Lord of the Rings card game, which I know has a bit of overlap with this game, there's an archetype in that game where you discard cards from your hand a lot. Most card games have it, but this game, because the resources are on your cards, because that's how you get resources, discarding would be more punishing from your hand. So you have to find very creative ways to figure that out, which is fun.
Yeah, and I did just actually, we're just kind of on a meandering journey today. This podcast is nonsense. But I did just recently read a Reddit thread where somebody created a custom hero. There's a pretty big custom Marvel Champions community out there.
I've done it myself.
You have done it yourself.
Yes, you made me a silk. Thank you.
I did.
There are... Yeah, anyway. So there's a bunch of... LazyTitan has made a couple. You made a Throg pack, and you made an Odin pack. Anyway, there's a pretty vibrant community around custom content, and somebody posted a deck they made around Hobie Brown, to circle back to what we were talking about earlier. And the mechanic he built into that was a discard mechanic, and he had a way to play cards out of his discard pile, and there was some identity specific cards included in that did not have a resource icon, so you couldn't actually spend them on other cards, and they had to be played from they could be played from your discard pile for a benefit.
And they were way better if you did.
You had to play them and then get them out of your discard pile. Basically, it was less of a discarding and more about playing from your discard pile, so putting things in there as much as possible. It was pretty cool.
It was very cool.
Pretty novel ideas in there. So if you're listening and you created that pack, shout out. It was awesome.
Yeah, that was awesome. When looking through it, I originally thought those cards were overpowered, insanely.
I'll put it in the show notes.
This is clearly someone who does not know how to design cards. What are they doing? But upon realizing that the cards have no resources, I realized that I had stumbled upon a genius, and this person was just beyond my understanding. But it's a very cool idea, and I think all the cards were better if you played them from your discard pile.
Yes,
so they were like pretty bad if you played them from your hand, which you kind of have to do because you can't spend them on anything. But if you put them in your discard pile, they were often double or triple as powerful.
Yeah, I'll put that in the show notes if anybody wants to check it out. It was pretty cool. Yeah, but I don't want to get into too much of that, but it made me think about that, and we're talking about discarding, and obviously, like I said, this podcast is... It's a
this
journey.
One's gotten a little off track.
It's more about the journey than the destination.
Let's get back on it.
Let's get back on Hulk. So Hulk, we talked about the art. We talked about the theme. I think the theme is on point. He's a little unpredictable. He does do a lot of damage, but he might do it to places you don't want to have it. That's fine. In terms of power, I think this is a pretty good card. It's a pretty powerful card.
I think it's a very good card.
Whether you're using it for defense, whether you're using it for attack, if you're building around it, I think it is pretty good. There will be times when you pull a mental resource and Hulk gets discarded, and that sucks. Bad. But if you're building around it, I think it's something you can make work. So overall, I think it's a pretty powerful card.
I think it's a pretty powerful card too. I think that the 5 hit points is not something to scoff at. I was mentioning earlier, I recently just played a Standard 2 campaign of Sinister Motives. And if you haven't played Standard 2 in a while, oh my God, there's so many boost icons. There's just so many.
Yeah, there is.
I always remember it. I always remembered it as the Surge set in my mind, because it's just like that was what I remember. I remember trying it as the Hood, and it was insane. But every single card is double or triple boost. Every single time you get attacked, it's usually 9 or at least like 6. So that kind of thing makes Hulk less useful.
Yeah.
But if you're playing like standard, just like regular standard, Hulk can probably take 2 shots from the villain. Some villains like Claw, just like
or a minion.
have 0 attack. Or minions.
Right? He can eat a minion attack, maybe 2, maybe 3.
And then you can eat an attack and then still swing back because he's got so many hit points. And then take another defense. He's really good as a meat shield. And he also, if you build around him, is an impressive amount of damage. 2 for 25, if you get it all right, is ridiculous. And I think that's some real power that you can use.
And with boot camp, just add 5 more.
5 more, 2 for 30.
Activation. Yeah, you could first aid him. You can heal him too. So first aid's risky because it's a mental resource, and you might end up discarding Hulk. But if you build around this, I think you could put out some pretty good damage. So overall, I also think it's fun. Like you mentioned, Keiko, it's kind of fun to not know what's going to happen. It provides some meaningful decisions, which is always important to me when I'm playing the game. I would like to see more Hulk allies, not just in aggression. I'd like to see, and we talked about this before, I want to see more allies in all the aspects. I don't care if they're duplicates. Like give me a yellow Hulk. I
want a red Peter Parker.
Yeah.
Just red spiders, really. I think Hulk we could see in protection. I think we have to not have him in justice just out of principle.
I mean, I think it could be a cool ally as a way to do damage in justice. Like there's a lot of damage dealing. He could be a defender. He could be someone to deal damage. He could deal out stun cards. I don't know. There's some other stuff he could do, but
we could get
I wouldn't mind
Hulk.
seeing multiple copies of characters in different aspects.
Yeah, Professor Hulk in Justice or Leadership.
Justice.
Yep.
Yeah, Professor Hulk. There you go. It's a different take on it. I like that. All right, so we've arrived at the rating time for Hulk. So let's talk about where we think Hulk falls in the spectrum. Again, 1 is bad, 10 is amazing, 5 is right in the middle. It's not a failing score. How would you guys rate the 2-cost ally, Hulk?
10.
That's not unexpected.
Coming in aggressive right from the start. Keiko with a 10. Do you want to explain why?
So as I mentioned before, he's just really fun to play. Even if you don't build around his forced response, you just throw him out there. 2 cost for 5 hit point meat shield on its own, amazing. Even if it was 3 cost, I'd feel like you'd still might play him. But the fact that he's 2, and then just the gamble, the fun, exciting aspect in itself that any of those forced responses could come out is just exciting. It's fun. I love those moments in the gameplay where it's like, I think I have to use him. I wonder what this card's going to be. Like, this is a gamble. Everybody's anticipating it, and then it is what it is. Just the aspect in itself. This card on its own, kind of adding a fun aspect to the game. I absolutely love it. And then, again, the 5 hit points, the insane attack, when the stars do align, it's just... I love this card. I love this ally. A lot of fun all around.
Yeah, it's really good. I'll let you have the last word, LazyTitan, so I will go next and give my review of Hulk. Any 2-cost ally is good. There's a bunch of them in different aspects, and just getting a block, really, if you bring them in, get a quick activation, and then a block, it's usually worth it for a 2-cost ally. So he gets points just for that. The 5 hit points and the insane attack and the unpredictability of his ability, are you going to clear someone's allies out? Are you going to wipe a bunch of Ultron drones? Are you going to deal extra damage to an ally? Are you going to punch yourself in the face and discard Hulk? You never know what's going to happen. For me, it's an auto-include, or as close to an auto-include, I think, as you can get in aggression allies, with Throg and Bug being the other big ones that I think a lot of people play, including me. I think for me, it is a solid 8 out of 10. I quite enjoy Hulk. I'm never mad when I see someone else play it. It does provide some memorable moments, and I've seen Keiko do this in the past. You activate Hulk, and you're not sure what that card is, and maybe it's going to be great, maybe it's going to be terrible. It fits into the theme of bringing out Hulk, and you need power, but it's a little unpredictable. There's a little bit of a powder keg feel to it, and I quite enjoy that. So 8 out of 10 for me. LazyTitan?
As far as my thoughts go on Hulk, I think Hulk is great. I think the 5 hit points and the 3 attack is insanely efficient. And with just a little bit of build around, you can almost certainly guarantee that extra 2 damage, which makes it really 5 attack, which you can split, which is actually can be meaningful. 3 damage and 2 damage are often low health minions. So you can perhaps kill 2 minions or kill 1 minion and then hit the villain for a little bit. It becomes, say you have like a enraged symbiote, you can hit them with that 2 damage and then something else with the 3. It can become meaningful. That lightning resource, not great, but Ultron, sometimes it helps. And the wild resource doesn't really ever happen, but it could be funny if it does. I think another thing I like about this ally quite a bit is that I think I like the design of it a lot. I don't know if we've mentioned it here before, but one of my complaints with allies is often that they are designed solely to fit best in the hero that you can't play them in. Like the basic Star-Lord ally who gives you an encounter card, which is not good for anybody but Star-Lord. And of course, that's the one deck you can't play it in. Though this card obviously would be great in a Hulk deck because you have all fist resources, it's not a bad ally anywhere else. It's a great ally, and I think that speaks to the excellence of its design. As far as aggression goes, I don't really ever play allies, but that's a me thing, and I can definitely acknowledge that this card is great, even though I sometimes don't play it when I maybe should. I will give it 8.5 out of 10.
8.5. So overall, we're pretty positive on Hulk. I think we said it all. It's a good card. It's a fun card. It enhances the experience for everyone at the table. I think it's just enjoyable. So it's what the game's all about. And nailed it on theme. Nailed it on fun.
Yeah,
well,
that's what I want to see.
We have come to another end of our podcast. Thank you to everyone who listened all the way through. Thank you to everyone who was following us on this journey through Marvel Champions, one card at a time. We look forward to seeing you next episode. And I will say goodbye from me and my 2 compatriots. See you next time.
Adios.